And we are joined here by Mr. Samir Abbass. He is an Egyptologist. Good morning, Mr. Samir.
Good morning.
Well, good morning. First of all, before we start talking the queens of Egypt, we have to distinguish between the royal wife, the Hatsheput or Hatsheput, and a ruling pharaoh, because a queen as a ruling pharaoh, these were very rare cases, either at the end of dynasties, certain lineages, or in, of course, the rare case of Hatsheput. So would you tell us a bit about the difference between just the title, the royal queen, as the wife of the king, and that of a ruling queen in ancient Egypt?
So that's a good way to start our subject, because the title queen only is confusing. It's we had hundreds of queens in ancient Egypt. Any wife or chief wife of a king or a pharaoh in ancient Egypt considered a queen, and we have hundreds of them. But what we are talking about today is different. We are talking about a queen which is ruled as a pharaoh, like a ruling queen, other words. So when it comes to that, we have very few. We have not that many. And I will explain the reason why we don't have that many royal queens or ruling queens in ancient Egyptian history. So roughly speaking, that's what documented in our history, about 6 of them. They are spread from the Old Kingdom, like Meritnite, through the Middle Kingdom, through the New Kingdom, which is most of them actually in the New Kingdom. More specified the 18th dynasty and the 19th dynasty as well. So the difference between the ruling queen and the regular queen, or the queen as a wife of the king, is the ruling queen, she was in power. And most probably, or actually it was common to use even the title of the pharaoh, not the queen. In the ancient Egyptian texts and documented history, these queens, when they ruled Egypt, they used the title pharaoh, like a male title in ancient Egypt. And even they use in the ancient Egyptian language suffix pronouns refer to them as male, not as a female, and that was exception. Even when it comes to the ancient Egyptian art, they have been introduced in most of the time as with male figures, even with a ceremonial beard and the male body like the male pharaohs. So there is a religious reason behind, and a cultural reason behind why there was not many ruling queens in ancient Egypt. It comes back to the ancient Egyptian mythology, and the ancient Egyptian mythology, that was a very important influence in politics in ancient Egypt. More specified, the story of Horus and his mother, the goddess Isis or Isit. Horus, considered in the ancient Egyptian mythology, is the ideal example of ruler. He is the one who challenged the evil, represented in his evil uncle Set, defeating the evil, casting the evil away, and unifying the country again. And that's why it became a custom for every Egyptian pharaoh to be looked at as a living form of Horus on earth. And since Horus was a male, it was more common actually to look at the male, as the pharaoh of Egypt, as a male, not as a female. There was exceptions, and these are the exceptions we will talk about today. And they were exceptions in a good way. Actually, most of them actually ruled Egypt in a very challenging time. There was a strong challenges of the country, which is make them acting like that and grabbing or grasping the power and declare themselves as a pharaohs. It wasn't easy for the Egyptian culture. It wasn't easy for the ancient Egyptian religion. So they have to work very hard to prove themselves that they can rule. Like
actually, she ruled for 21 years according to ancient authors, right?
That's Hatsheput.
Yes.
Yeah. So
Hatsheput,
yes, exactly. So because now we can jump into Hatsheput, if you'd like to about Hatsheput now, because there is other queens, like just mentioned the names now, like Nefertiti, and there is a debate, by the way, if she is really ruled or not. There's still a matter of debate. Of course, we have Hatsheput, we have
Sobek Neferu before her,
and Taus. Sobek Neferu, that is 12th dynasty, and we have Taus from the 19th dynasty.
But that's
by the way, they have she had a very beautiful tomb in the Valley of the Kings. That's another interesting thing, that we have 2 valleys for burials in the west bank of Luxor. We have the Valley of the Kings and we have the Valley of the Queens.
Yeah.
So most of these queens buried in the Valley of the Kings, not in the Valley of the Queens. So, and then the last known pharaoh ruled is Cleopatra.
Actually, we
Cleopatra,
have
the
now on
siblings.
screen part of the columns, the capital of the columns from the
Her
chapel of
temple.
Hatshepsut.
Her
Yeah,
temple.
the Hathor chapel from Queen Hatshepsut.
So, before talking about actually her temple, let's talk about the time period.
Yes.
That was the 18th dynasty, which is nearly 1500 BC. Her father is the king Thutmose the first, a very powerful king, which is he is the one who led the Egyptian army into controlling and pushing the Egyptian border as far as Iraq and as far as Turkey in the north. And her husband is the half-brother as well, is the king Thutmose II, which is he didn't rule actually for a long time, and possibly he wasn't that strong king as well. So this lady, she has been raised in a palace with a very strong father, very powerful father. She knew the politics from inside, outside. She was very powerful, had a very great charisma as a leadership.
I think she ruled Egypt at first in a very difficult times, as you said.
Yes, so it was a time that when her husband died early, leaving no heir to the throne, or better to say, leaving Thutmose III. Boy, he was 11 or 10 or 11 years old in that time, and he's not the son of Hatshepsut, by the way. Hatshepsut, like her mother before, she gave only birth of daughters, not man. So he had another wife, like not a chief wife, and that's caused a problem because Thutmose III, which is her stepson, have a half royal blood because he's not coming from her direct blood. That's how we'll have two versions of the story. If Hatshepsut casted or exiled Thutmose III away from the palace, that's what the classical archaeologists believing in, or she spent a tremendous effort to raise him well, to educate him well, so he would grow powerful and sharing the power with him until he became 30.
But now Egyptologists are tending more, especially after the discovery of her mummy, to the second one, especially that there were certain scenes of them for him as courageous with her.
So to be honest, this story alone could be a beautiful movie, one of the greatest movie actually, and that is one of the best ways to promote for Egypt as well. When you ask people about how do you know about Cleopatra, for example, they will mention actually many of them they will mention Elizabeth Taylor and the movie, and we have such examples of a great drama like Hatshepsut, Thutmose III, Thutmose the First in the Egyptian history, Akhenaten as well, and Nefertiti, and that was another big drama. So going back, so we don't have the picture anymore, but this picture, that was one of the columns in her temple. She has one of the most beautiful temples in the West Bank, and that's showing that how powerful she was, because she picked the best spot for her mortuary temple. When you see Ramses II temple, the Ramesseum temple, when you see Merenbetah temple, and when you see even Seti the First temple, and how far they are from the Valley of the Kings, and compare that with Hatshepsut temple is very much connected with the Valley of the Kings, actually on the other side, built on the other side of the mountain, and her shrine, or the Holy of the Holies of this temple, was tunneled toward the Valley of the Kings, And
it said that actually it goes parallel almost to reach under her tomb in a sense.
It was tunneled, exactly. It was tunneled toward, and to have this power to choose this particular spot, which is also there is a legend behind that. That's where Hathor and Isis and Horus was hiding. That means that she was a very powerful queen.
So tell us more about her major accomplishments.
So another important accomplishment is her sponsoring a trip to the mysterious land of Punt. So why I mention Punt? Because, of course, that was a land which is reached by different pharaohs, but she documented her trip very well. And Punt nowadays is one of the countries in the east coast of Africa. It could be Ethiopia, it could be Djibouti, it could be Somalia. Still a very big debate about which country, which is, according to most recent research, possibly it is Ethiopia, by the way. So anyway, and this trip is documented on the wall of her temple, Hatshepsut temple in the West Bank. And in this trip, she managed to buy or trade with many exotic products, which is the ancient Egyptian needed, especially in their temples, like the incense and incense trees. And she did something actually different than many of the other kings did. And instead of bringing only incense, she decided to bring small trees, baby trees of the incense trees, transplanted, to have it planted here and here, so she will save the effort and the time to go back and forth to bring the incense. So and that's how I come across to her temple again, because there was a small garden laid at the entrance of her temple, and is still remaining of the incense trees. You can see it over there. Another big achievement of Hatshepsut as well is she kept the Egyptian economy the Egyptian army strong. The 18th dynasty is considered the golden age of the ancient Egyptian history. And that's, by the way, some of, on the screen now, some of the statues we have for Hatsheput. It's very surprising when you look at her statues and her art, expecting to see a female figures, you'll get the opposite. You see a male figures. You see a man, actually, if you are not familiar with hieroglyphics, if you cannot read the names of this king, actually, in hieroglyphics, 100% you will assume that he is a king, not she is a queen. And that have a reason in the ancient Egyptian time. So it's common to see her with a man body, with a ceremonial beard of leadership as well. The reason is that because the ancient Egyptian art was used, that was their best tool, or the most common tool they use it for media in ancient Egypt. It used like a TV. It was like the show we are sitting on right now. It was like newspapers and magazines. By the ancient Egyptian art, the kings and governments, they used to introduce their values, their stories, their influences as well, and that's how she would like to see it. It is not common for a woman to rule in ancient Egypt. It is not a way to say that her rule wasn't prosperous. No, her rule was very prosperous. But to come to power, she has lots of problems already. She had a problem with the temple, with Karnak temple. And no wonder that she was the most dedicated. She dedicated a lot to Karnak temple. There is 2 big obelisks erected by her in Karnak temple, and many other shrines as well. So otherwise she was buying. She was, other word, bribing actually the priests of Karnak temple to acknowledge her as the king of Egypt. So she has another problem as well, you know, of course, for being a female and for being not acknowledged by the ancient Egyptian religion, because Horus was a male, not a female, and that's why she came across with introducing herself as a male, as a male figure, not as a female. So in the face of the people, the commoner, they still keeping this image of the powerful ruling pharaoh ruling them, which is not a way to say that they don't know that their pharaoh is a lady, but most probably they know, but at least in their face they kept this image, the powerful image, which is they get used to.
Now, definitely Hatsheput is an iconic figure, and always when we talk about her, we talk about also the great men who were under her command, and it's not just Samir, but even the commander-in-chief of her army and her vizier or her advisor and chancellor and prime minister. So having the skill to choose the right men to serve her and to be loyal to her, how do you see that, and how did she utilize these men for the prosperity of the country and of course for stabilizing her rule?
So from this perspective, I can say nothing except that she was a great leader, because a leader should have advisors, and the leader, there is no leader who knows everything, and any leader who introduces himself that he knows everything about everything, you know that he is not that good leader at all. So that's one of her strengths. She was using the right advisors. Samir, as you mentioned, that was her prime minister, and he was the chief of her advisors. And that's why some of the kings who ruled in the 18th dynasty, and they were jealous from her achievements, they made rumors or they made stories, which is still nothing being justified yet, about sexual relationship between her and her prime minister. And unfortunately, in the caves on the West Bank, in these hiking routes between her temple and the Valley of the Kings, you can see some pornography, graffiti, you know, which is still that not from her time. That happens like 150 years or 100 years after her death. So that was just a side topic about the story, which makes a very good drama as well about how some kings back in the ancient time, especially the kings of the 19th dynasty, and more specified Ramses II, they tend to destroy the reputation of other politicians, and the same story is still happening until today.
I'd like to thank you, Mr. Samir Abbass, Egyptologist, and we'll continue in later episodes our talk about Egyptian queens. Thank you, sir, for being with us.